You notice it when you do something you've done 1,000 times, and it suddenly feels like you're borrowing someone else's hands. You unlock your phone, open the same apps, check the same messages, follow the same tiny rituals that used to make the day feel organized, and there's this half-second delay inside you, like your mind is waiting for a feeling that doesn't arrive. Or you step into your usual coffee place, order the usual thing, hear the same sounds, and nothing is wrong, but you feel slightly late to your own life, like you showed up to a scene that already started without you. Even your own voice can sound a bit unfamiliar in conversations, not because you've changed your personality overnight, but because your inner state is no longer matching the role your mouth is used to playing. That strange delay is one of the most quietly unsettling sensations a person can have, because it's not dramatic enough to justify panic, and it's not clear enough to solve quickly. You make decisions, follow routines, show up, act responsible, keep moving, and yet something feels out of sync, like your external life is running on an outdated version of you. You're present, but not fully aligned. And if you're not careful, you'll call it confusion, laziness, moodiness, or I'm just tired. But often the discomfort isn't confusion, it's awareness. It's the realization that your life hasn't caught up to who you've become. Most people don't realize how much of their day is a continuation of old decisions. Not old as in years ago necessarily, but old as in made under a different set of inner priorities. You're living inside choices that once represented you very accurately. They matched what mattered then. They matched what you needed then. They matched what your nervous system believed was safest then. Your current environment, your calendar, your habits, your relationships, even the way your home is arranged, reflects past beliefs more than present awareness. That's not a moral failure. That's just how time works. External life has momentum. It's built slowly, like a path in the ground that becomes easier to walk every time you take it. Which means your life is often a time capsule of who you used to be. If you've ever found an old photo and felt tender for the person in it, you already understand this. That person made decisions based on what they knew, what they feared, what they wanted, what they assumed they had to be. They built structure. They built stability. They built a story that helped them get through. The problem is not that the structure was wrong. The problem is that you're still living in it after your internal compass has shifted. And when your perspective evolves, those older choices can begin to feel misaligned, not because they're objectively bad, but because they no longer represent you. This is why you can look around and feel a kind of quiet mismatch even when things are fine. Your job may still be decent. Your relationship may still be functional. Your routines may still be productive. But the emotional fit is different. The person who built this life was optimized for a different set of pressures. Maybe they were optimized for approval. Maybe they were optimized for certainty. Maybe they were optimized for survival, for stability, for keeping the peace. Maybe they were optimized for proving something. That older identity made sense of the world in a way that helped you move forward. But identity isn't fixed. It updates through experience, through grief, through disappointment, through small awakenings you can't reverse. When identity evolves, the life it created can start to feel like a memory you're still living in. That's also why change can feel slower than your inner growth. Internal shifts can happen quickly. One conversation, one loss, 1 year of quiet exhaustion, one moment where you see a pattern and you can't unsee it. Suddenly you know things you didn't know before. You have awareness you didn't have before. You can feel your values rearranging in the background. You stop being impressed by what used to impress you. You stop being motivated by what used to motivate you. You start caring about different kinds of peace. That inner movement can be fast, but external life changes require time, action, and restructuring. They require appointments, conversations, boundaries, repetition, uncomfortable follow-through. They require you to change what you do on ordinary days, not what you understand in private moments. And that creates lag, a gap between awareness and reality. You're running new software internally, but the external system is still configured for the older version. That lag can feel frustrating because your mind is already somewhere else, but your life is still arranged like before. Growth feels uncomfortable when your mind evolves faster than your circumstances. There's a simple reason the gap can feel so sharp. Your nervous system doesn't experience time the way your intellect does. Your intellect can see the future. Your nervous system lives in patterns. Under pressure, it defaults to what's familiar. Familiar doesn't always mean good, but it does mean tested. The body reads tested as safer. So even if you've had profound insight, your system might still reach for old behaviors when you're tired, stressed, lonely, or uncertain. That's why behavior often lags behind understanding. Knowing better doesn't immediately mean acting differently. Not yet. And when you keep living inside outdated patterns while your awareness is ahead, there's a psychological cost. Continuing to perform an old version of yourself creates internal tension. You might feel restless without a clear reason, disconnected in rooms where you used to belong, subtly dissatisfied even when nothing is wrong. It's not lack of gratitude, it's misalignment. Gratitude is about appreciating what exists. Misalignment is about noticing what no longer fits. You can be grateful and misaligned at the same time. In fact, that combination is one of the most confusing experiences because it removes the moral clarity people like to use. You can't just say, "My life is terrible," and make a clean exit. The life may be fine. The problem is the delay. The longer the gap persists, the heavier it feels, because every day becomes a rehearsal of something you're no longer convinced by. This weight doesn't always show up as sadness. Sometimes it shows up as a low-grade irritability. Sometimes it shows up as numbness. Sometimes it shows up as procrastination that feels unlike you. Sometimes it shows up as fantasizing about drastic changes, not because you need drama, but because your system is craving coherence. It wants the inside and outside to match again. When they don't, the mind starts searching for relief. That's where people often try to fix the feeling by making the feeling go away, instead of addressing the lag. They push themselves harder into old routines, hoping discipline will restore meaning. They double down on roles that no longer feel natural, hoping performance will bring back belonging. They chase old goals with renewed intensity, hoping success will plug the gap. But if the gap is identity-based, effort won't close it. Effort can widen it because it forces you deeper into a structure your awareness is already outgrowing. Trying to force yourself back into your old life can become its own exhaustion. And still, even with awareness, you keep repeating old patterns anyway. This is where people get cruel with themselves. They say, "I know better, so why am I still doing this?" But awareness is not the same as rewiring. Awareness is the light. Rewiring is the repetition that follows. Under pressure, the brain defaults to familiar habits. That's what it does. It's not a spiritual statement. It's a biological one. The nervous system is designed to reduce uncertainty quickly. When the threat response is activated, your attention narrows. Your thinking becomes less flexible. Your body prioritizes fast, known strategies: defend, appease, withdraw, numb, control, overthink. Those strategies can feel like personality, but they're often just what your system learned would keep you safe in the short term. There's also a subtle reward mechanism involved, not in a motivational poster way, but in a practical way. Dopamine is often less about pleasure and more about reward expectation, the sense that a behavior will deliver relief. If checking your phone reduces uncertainty for a moment, your brain learns it. If overthinking makes you feel prepared for a moment, your brain learns it. If people-pleasing prevents conflict for a moment, your brain learns it. If staying busy helps you avoid feeling for a moment, your brain learns it. These behaviors become quick exits from discomfort. And quick exits are seductive when you're living in lag, because lag itself feels like discomfort without an obvious cause. So awareness alone doesn't immediately create transformation. Awareness creates friction. It lets you see the pattern, but the pattern is still strong until you interrupt it consistently. This is the moment that matters, the moment you start updating your reality, not with a dramatic reinvention, not with a speech, not with a new identity label you post and then try to live up to. The update begins in small decisions that reflect your current awareness. You start choosing differently in familiar situations. You notice the impulse to do the old thing, and you pause just long enough to create a second option. Old patterns weaken as new ones take shape, and slowly, your external life starts catching up because your daily actions are no longer feeding the outdated version. Your life updates the moment your actions start matching your awareness. That sounds simple, but it's not easy, because it requires you to tolerate a new kind of discomfort. The discomfort of not taking the old exit. If you're used to relieving anxiety by checking, you have to sit with the anxiety for a minute longer. If you're used to relieving tension by explaining yourself, you have to let the misunderstanding exist for a minute longer. If you're used to relieving loneliness by chasing someone unavailable, you have to tolerate loneliness without turning it into pursuit. If you're used to relieving uncertainty by making a plan, you have to hold uncertainty without forcing premature certainty. This is where a brief micro-practice can make the difference between insight that stays theoretical and change that becomes real. The next time you feel that delayed sensation, like your life is moving but you aren't fully inside it, try this without making it a ritual, just as a practical interruption. Take one slow breath and let your exhale be slightly longer than your inhale. That longer exhale is a small signal to your threat response that you're not in immediate danger, which buys you a fraction of choice. Then ask yourself one question that cuts through the noise. What would the current version of me do here if I wasn't trying to maintain the old version? You're not asking for a grand life plan. You're asking for one small move. One email you don't send. One conversation you don't perform in. One boundary you hold gently. One habit you adjust by 5%. One moment of silence you don't fill. And then do the smallest version of that move you can actually repeat, because repetition is how the nervous system learns. One heroic day doesn't close the gap. 100 small, consistent choices do. If that sounds underwhelming, good. Underwhelming is stable. Underwhelming is real. Grand gestures can be another way of avoiding the slow work of alignment. Alignment happens through repeated intentional choices. That's the actual mechanism. You gradually replace outdated structures with new ones, new rhythms, new boundaries, new conversations, new priorities. You don't do it all at once. You do it as your capacity grows. As you do, the feeling of delay starts to disappear. Not because you've achieved some perfect state, but because your life becomes coherent again. The inside and outside begin to match. You stop living in the aftermath of old decisions and start living in the consequences of current choices. Your environment begins reflecting you again, not as a mirror that flatters you, but as a mirror that feels accurate. This doesn't mean you burn down your whole life. Sometimes the update is internal first. You change how you respond, what you tolerate, what you invest in, and then the external changes follow naturally. A relationship either adapts or reveals its limits. A job either expands with you or becomes clearly temporary. A routine either fits the new you or becomes obviously outdated. The rebuild can be quiet. Quiet is often how real change actually integrates. There's also a philosophical piece here that can keep you from turning this into self-attack. You're not behind because you feel lag. Lag is part of being human in time. You cannot update an entire life at the speed of an insight. Your life is built from momentum, commitments, responsibilities, and relationships that have their own inertia. The goal is not instant transformation. The goal is to stop living as if the current you is obligated to protect the past you. Past you did their job. They got you here. Now your job is different, to let present you become real in the small places that actually define a life. Here's the paradox line worth keeping once. The more you try to feel aligned without changing anything, the more misaligned you become. Because alignment isn't a feeling you summon, it's a consequence you build. So if you're feeling out of sync with your own life, treat it as a signal, not a diagnosis. The discomfort is not necessarily confusion. It's awareness noticing the lag. It's the mind saying, this structure is older than I am now. It's the nervous system saying, I've been living in familiar for so long, I forgot what accurate feels like. You stop living a delayed version of yourself when your present choices finally reflect your present identity. Not in a performative way, in a practical way. You choose what you can repeat. You update what you can sustain. You let your external life catch up one small decision at a time. And if you're wondering where to start where the lag is loudest. Start with the one routine that feels most mechanical. The one conversation where you hear yourself playing the old role. The one habit you use to escape the feeling. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to stop pretending the lag isn't there. Because the moment your actions begin matching your awareness, even slightly, your reality starts updating. And that's the only kind of update that lasts. So here's the question to take with you, not to answer quickly, but to let it sit somewhere quiet. If your life is a time capsule of who you used to be, what is one small decision today that would make it a little more honest to who you are now? There is also a quieter form of patience required here, the kind nobody really celebrates because it does not look productive from the outside. Once you become aware of the gap, you may expect your life to reorganize immediately, as if understanding should automatically become evidence. But the outside world has weight. It has schedules, obligations, emotional contracts, financial realities, people who still know the older version of you, and habits that were built through years of repetition. So there may be a period where you can clearly see what needs to change, but you cannot change all of it at once. That delay can feel humiliating if you believe awareness should make everything instant. But in real life, integration is slower than insight. Insight happens in a moment. Integration happens in how you spend the next ordinary Tuesday. And this is where you have to be careful not to mistake slowness for failure. Sometimes the most mature thing you can do is not a dramatic leap, but a clean adjustment made consistently enough that your life begins trusting you again. You answer one message differently. You stop volunteering for one role that drains you. You protect one evening from noise. You let one old expectation disappoint someone without rushing to repair their discomfort. These are not small because they are weak. They are small because they are repeatable. And repeatable is what becomes real. The life that fits you now will not usually arrive as a single door opening. It will arrive as a series of subtle corrections, each one telling your nervous system, this is who we are now. This is how we live now. This is what we no longer abandon ourselves to maintain.